everyone, how are you? We're gonna get around to those wide leg palazzo pants today, and I'm so happy that you're here. Now, the pattern that I am using for my pants is New Look 6384. These are really simple. I think you're gonna be surprised. As far as fitting these call for stretch fabric. So you're gonna have to use something on the back of patterns with stretch that require stretch fabrics. You'll usually see a little diagram, and you can test and make sure that your fabric stretches from here to here, and it will work well for the pattern. Now, if you don't have stretch fabric, I would direct you to this New Look pattern, which is 6289. It is virtually the same pants, same construction, I'm certain, but this one here is drafted for woven non-stretch fabric. I'm gonna be using an ITY, and I'll show it to you in just a moment. This pants pattern has two pieces. You got your front and you got your back. I don't know how much more straightforward that could be. I am going to add pockets to mine. Now, all I've done here is just grabbed a pocket template. I happened to grab it from Vogue 9237. You can grab a little pocket piece, an inseam pocket piece from any any pattern that you have handy. Just make sure it's not a giant pocket. This is a pretty, moderately sized pocket that I'm going to put inseam so that it's sandwiched between the side seams, and then your pants will have pockets. If you want to skip the pockets, skip the pockets. So the first thing that we're going to do, of course, is iron our pattern pieces. This makes a big difference. Doesn't take long at all, and it's worth it, because if you don't iron your pattern pieces, well, then they're going to be all wrinkled, and you could make some cutting errors. So we're going to be using piece number 3 and 4. Let's get them ironed, and then I'll show you my fabric, and we're gonna cut these pants out. Hang on. Well, I did not buy myself a new tablecloth. Look at this ITY knit that I have to use for these palazzo pants. This is a diagonal, sort of diagonal design. Let me find the straight edge of my fabric over here. And I thought, well, let's go bold. Now, if you don't want to go super duper bold with your wide leg pants, that's perfectly fine. You do not have to. One of these years, I'll get this straightened out. Of course, I'm operating with one hand. Oh, okay, there it is. And I just love how I think these pants are going to remind me of water, the ocean, movement, swirling, and I hope that that's going to create a great effect. I found that I did not need to iron my ITY knit. If your knit is creased and kind of wrinkly, give it an iron, a nice ironing, because that's going to make your job of cutting out a lot easier. So I have folded my fabric to meet in the middle, and I've just been able to squeeze out enough to put these pattern pieces on like this. The back piece is a little bit wider than the front piece. Now you've got that long grain line on your pattern piece, and it's a good idea to make sure that that line is equidistant from your fold. So I have 8 1/4 inch here, and I have 8 1/2 inch here. That means that I need to adjust this just slightly so that when I measure that line to my fold, which is parallel to my selvage, I have about 8 1/4 there and 8 1/4 there. Now I can begin pinning. I use pins. If you use pattern weight, it's good for you. Here's a tip about choosing your size. For pants, I look on the back of the envelope of Simplicity and New Look Patterns. They are wonderful because they put that information right on. Hey, what are you doing? Oh, this is Trix. Is he in the shot? Yeah, he probably is. Well, he's a very social fellow, whereas Zig is a very shy fellow. But Zig's manners are impeccable, and I cannot say the same of Trix. At any rate, find the finished garment measurements if you can. Simplicity and New Look make it easy. It's right on the envelope. And for pants, I like to match my hip. Of course, we're using stretch fabric, and so I'm not going to match it exactly because I know that there's going to be a stretch factor. So a size small with this pattern will fit my hips very well. Excuse me, please move along, go on. Quit complaining. Do you see what I mean about the manners? You'll have a little bit of stretch in there. So you don't want to match your hip measurement exactly unless you want a very roomy fit. I generally choose a size that is 2, 3, maybe even 4 inches smaller than my hip size because I know that these pants are going to stretch. And these pants are super comfortable. I don't know if I mentioned before that I have made them, but they're not a real tight fit. And the other nice thing about them, we're going to form a casing up here at the waistline, and they don't look all bunched up with elastic. Even though we are using elastic, they're not going to look all bunchy, and you know, that's not the greatest look. So I really like this pattern because the waist area comes out nice and flat and flattering. So go ahead and pin on your pattern pieces and get to cutting. I have gone ahead and pinned the back, and now I'm just going to take my scissors and begin cutting. I like to cut my notches out, and I like to make them nice and big so I can see them. That's probably because of advancing age. At any rate, pin, cut, enjoy. Okay, I love cutting. I know a lot of people think, ugh, I hate cutting, it's the worst part. Well, I love cutting because the garment is coming to life, and I find that totally satisfying. And I like to be a very careful cutter. I like to have nice, clean, smooth cutting lines, keeping my scissors very close, or my pattern piece rather, very close to the table and not lifting it up real high. And then, ooh, it's so much fun when you get your pattern cut out because the sewing can begin. All right, I'm on my way and I'll be back in a few. Wanted to let you know that if you are adding inseam pockets, you will need 4 of them. And what I like to do, just to make it simpler and a little more efficient, is just cut all 4 of those at once. So I would fold my fabric in half, like so, and line up my edges to make sure they're straight. And then I would just simply fold it in half again. Now I have given myself 4 layers here, and I can pin that pocket on there. Again, watching that grain line so that it's straight and parallel with the edge, and I'm gonna cut it. Now, a minor aside. I didn't know when I started making these little construction videos that cutting would trigger quite a, well, you might say polarizing response. And I was told, or perhaps it was suggested, that I was wasting fabric with my cutting layout, and that is frowned upon. Well, I agree that waste is frowned upon, but I don't aim to waste things. I don't think anyone does. And, well, not to be impertinent, but with all due respect, once you have purchased your fabric, it is yours. And you know, if you want to, you can, I don't know, fly it from the roof of your house, or fly it from the roof of your house, cut a nickel-sized hole in it and be done with it. I don't want to waste fabric. I want to assure you of that. However, where you might see some error in my cutting, give me a little bit of a wide berth. We all have different styles, and yes, you want to economize with your fabric, but here's what guides me. I don't want to use my fabric again. I want to move on to something new. I donate large pieces, of course. I think I've mentioned before, my sister is a quilter. She gets all of my woven leftovers, and she runs a quilting club on Monday nights, and I love knowing that my fabric is going there for a second, third chance. But smaller pieces I'm not going to keep, and I'm not going to hang on to fabric because I don't want to. I don't want to hang on to scraps. At any rate, that was just a minor aside about cutting layouts. Definitely go for the most economical and get the most use out of your fabric. I am definitely going to cheer that, although I shouldn't wave scissors around. Okay, I'm gonna cut out my pockets and I'll be right back. All right, we are back. This is the elusive Zig. He has just come in from outside and probably can't get him to look up here. Oh, go here, you beautiful thing. Just about every single pants pattern that I've ever made begins by sewing the inner leg seams together. And sometimes it can get confusing, and what happens is you sew the backs together or the fronts together, and that is not gonna be good. So put your back here, put your front here, remove the pattern pieces. Okay. Make sure that we sew front to back, not back to back or front to front. So peel off one of those. That's the back, that's the front. And now I can set those aside and know that it's the back to front, and I am going to sew the inner leg together, which of course here is your crotch curve up here, and it leads down to the inner leg right here. You have also cut a nice little notch there, and you can match those up and pin together. That's going to be our very first seam. So line them up, and when you've pinned that one, get your other two over here. You know these are front and back and not back and back or front and front. Put the right sides together and pin the inner leg seam on the other one. Okay, today I'm going to use a ballpoint needle. If you're unsure about what kind of needle to use with your knits, there are a couple to choose from. There's ballpoint, and there is actually a stretch needle. It's just called a stretch needle. Take a piece of your fabric, put in the needle of your choice, and run a couple practice stitches and make sure that your needle isn't skipping. If you have trouble with the ballpoint, try a stretch. And if you have trouble with the ballpoint, try a thinner ballpoint. You know, they come in different sizes. So my ITY is kind of thin. And I chose, I think it's like an 11 ballpoint. So we're gonna start at the hem, and I'm gonna sew straight up. Glasses. We'll try not to wear two pair on my head at once. We're doing a 5/8 inch seam. And you might recall from another video that I said, hold your fabric up. You can even put it over your shoulder, and it's just gonna feed into your machine better. I'm gonna take a stitch or two and back tack. I'm going to put my stitch length on 3, and we're off to the races. Now, right away, my machine is eating my fabric. It does happen, and we can remedy that. So I'm gonna pull this out, and often what will solve it is just starting in a little further from the edge. If I continue to have problems, I'll get a new needle. Let's see if I can get it started this time. There it goes. Back tack, line up those edges, and go. And I can see that I'm not skipping any stitches, so this needle seems to be a pretty good fit. We'll do the rake. Do you ever do the rake where you're going along and to keep the edges lined up, you just kind of rake over with your left hand? It's a very good technique, and it'll save you from using a whole lot of pins. If you feel comfortable with pins, well, you just pin away. You have to find your own sewing style, and particularly when you're learning, and may I just add right here that I adore beginning sewists, seamstresses. I am so happy when people say that they have just started sewing and that they want to learn, because that just makes me happy. It's such a worthwhile pursuit to make your own clothing. So I only had one pin in on this long seam, and it seemed to do pretty well. I'm getting up here to the tip top of that inner leg seam, and I want to make sure that those match just right. I'm going to hold them in place at the top, and I will finish off that seam with a quick back tack and cut. Okay, we have our inner leg seams sewn, and here's what mine are looking like. I did not match because I want this to be an eclectic garment. I did not match my lines. I'm just letting them come out however they want to. Now, when you make that seam, you can see that when I open up my ITY knit, those two sides they just almost press themselves open. It's so nice with knits because they don't fray and you don't have a bunch of strings everywhere. You can leave the seams like this, or you can finish them by overcasting or running that through the serger. Now it's not gonna ravel, so it's your choice. I am going to run my inner leg seam through the serger because I've gotten into the habit of doing that, and so that's what I'm gonna do. But again, you do not have to. After we do that, finish the whatever finish we would like for our seam, we are going to sew the crotch curve. And we are going to connect these two pieces together. Don't forget to press your seams open. Even though they kind of want to fall open on their own, or if you have finished them off with the serger like I have, press them to one side or press them open. It may seem superfluous to do this, but it's just a good habit of sewing to get into. That after you sew your seams, give them a press. And your garment is just gonna look nice in the end. So there is my inner leg seam, and these are gonna be some pretty wild and wacky pants. It's time to sew the crotch curve together. We're joining the front and back of the pants. So of course we will want to do right sides facing one another. And we are going to just lay them out on top of each other, matching those notches. The longer notch is the back of the pants. The smaller notch is the front of the pants. And then you're gonna wanna make sure that that center seam, that inner leg seam that we just sewed, that those are matched up pretty well. So, well, not pretty well, matched up exactly. So place your pins where you need them. And it should be a very nice fit because you have these great big notches to guide your steps. I hope this is on camera. It's a little hard to tell sometimes. So once you get those two pinned together, we are going to just sew in a big horseshoe shape right there. All right, here we go. Got it lined up. We'll back tack at the beginning. And since you're sewing a curve here, go ahead and just take your time, because you want to try and maintain that 5/8 inch distance from the edge all the way around the curve. So you can gently manipulate your fabric around the curve and over the center seam there, that seam junction. Okay, and now up the other side. Once you get this seam in, these are going to start really looking like pants. And we're pretty close to finishing. So sew that big U shape, then go back and sew it again. Sew over your first stitches, or if you don't want to do that, you could just sew over the you know, the direct U there in the middle, but just reinforce it because that's a stress area of pants and you want those reinforcement stitchings in there. Okay, hang on, we'll be right back. Well, now you've got that big U and you're going, what in the world are these? But look at this. Turn them right side out. Bring the waistline up to meet one another. And you know what? You're starting to look like pants. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put in the pocket. It's very easy. I'm a big pocket person. I like to know that I have some place to put my keys or put my phone, and if you don't want to put in the pockets, you don't have to, but I'll show you how easy it is to do. Get your 4 pocket pieces that we cut out all in one fell swoop and unpin them from the pattern piece, okay? Okay, I have a highly technical way of marking the front of my pants. I like to take a fabric marking pen and mark which is the front, because it can get a little confusing, and particularly if you shear off those notches that would normally help you determine the front from the back. So you can tell that the front has the shorter rise, but I just mark it. I put that little F in there, stands for front, and then I know which way I'm gonna want my pockets to face. So let's get these pockets in. It's really not difficult. We are gonna sew our pockets right side to right side initially. So get a pocket piece and put it right side to right side on the edge of your front pant piece. I'm gonna place mine about 3 inches down from the top of the pants. Okay, place your pocket there, peel off another one, and place it over here, 3 inches down from the top, right side to right side. Then we're going to flip the pants over. Where'd my pockets go? We're gonna peel off another one, and we will do right side to right side, 3 inches down from the top, and the last one over here. Once you have your pockets pinned into place, so you have 4 of them, 2 on the back, 2 on the front. We're going to sew them on there in a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Come with me. All right, we have our pocket pinned to our front pant piece. We're gonna match up that edge, and we are going to put it under our machine at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So here's 5/8 on my machine. I just kind of count in, there's 4, and 1 more over is gonna be 3. I don't have a marking, so I just kind of have to do it that way. So now we're going to proceed. We'll back tack at the beginning, making sure our edges are lined up, and we will just attach that pocket piece. When you get to the top, back stitch it once or twice, and cut, and I'll show you what you should have. Just like that. So your pocket has this nice little seam, and the right sides are together. All right, you attached your pockets. They look a little funny sticking out of the edges like that. So you have 4 of them. After you attach them, go ahead and press that pocket seam toward the pocket. Okay, on each one, press the pocket seam toward the pocket. This is going to help your pockets to lie nice and flat, and we're all about the clean finish. So do that for each one, and then we're going to sew up our side seams. We're getting closer. Also, you'll see this in the shot. Oops, there went the pants. If your knit is being tricky and not behaving, try a little bit of this spray starch or any kind of spray starch on the edges. It can help a lot to stabilize things. All right, The pants are laid out right side together. You'll see these, got my pointer chopstick here. You will see these pockets sticking out on either side. Here is your waistline where we are going to fold it over to make a casing. And since our pockets are about 3 inches down from the top, they're not going to get caught up in that casing. The casing will end about right here. So place your pants right sides together, pin your side seam, and you're going to go to the sewing machine and stitch straight up here. You'll come up about 1.5 inches here into the pocket area and stop. You'll pick it up again here about 1 inch down into the pocket area and go straight up. So you have essentially left a little hole between these points for your hands to go into the pocket. Then you will sew 5/8 inches around your pocket and meet at the side seam. All right, I'm going to show you how to sew this pocket. Now here's my pocket sticking out, and you want these pocket seams to be facing the pocket like we pressed them. You can see here that I'm not exactly matched up, but you know what? That's going to be okay. So we're at 5/8 inch of a seam. We're going to start up, back tack, and we're going to sew down to about 1 inch into 1.5 inches into this pocket area. Back stitch to reinforce at that point and cut. Move your pants down a little bit to about another 1.5 inches there at your pocket, and lower your needle so that when your seam starts to progress, it's going to come out at that 5/8 inch mark. So begin, back tack to reinforce there, and progress. And you should come out right there at that 5/8 inch seam mark. And now you will just continue down your side seam all the way to the hem. Okay, you can left a hole here, approximately big enough for your hand to get into your pocket. Now we're going to finish off the pocket bag. Again, to reiterate, you would like to have these pocket bags perfectly matched, but if they are not, it will not be the end of the world. So starting at your side seam, lower your needle so that when you begin to sew, this is going to come up at about 5/8 inch seam allowance. And now we're just going to go around the pocket bag. I am sewing that at a 5/8 inch seam allowance. And we just go around the bottom. Just turn your fabric, manipulate. One hand, both hands. When you get down here to the bottom of the pocket, we want those seams to lie toward the pocket. So just sort of place them, come back up, and meet that side seam that you just stitched. Back tack once, twice, forward again, and cut. Now you have finished your pocket bag and you have a pocket in your pants. The only other thing you will want to do is clip where the pockets, can you get this away from the light of the machine? Where the pockets meet the edge of your seam. Give them a little clip there so that they can then fold forward and lie flat. So clip them at the bottom of the pocket and give them a little clip at the top, right into the seam line, and that's going to make your pockets lie nice and flat. we're heading on to the waistband and then we'll be done. It's time to make a casing for our elastic at the waist of our pants. So the instructions tell us to fold in 1.5 inches to the inside. Now, I believe they want us to use 1 inch wide elastic. Here you have a little bit of a leeway. You can do as instructed. You can use wider elastic, and that will sort of pull the rise up a little bit if you have a little too much room there. Or conversely, you can use less wide, thinner elastic, and that would give you just a skosh more room in the rise lengthwise. So it's really up to you. Put your pants on and see how you like how they're fitting, and then you're going to make a casing. And again, you're just going to fold in. The pattern instructs 1.5 inches and sew around, leaving an opening so that you can insert elastic. I'm going to go with the 1 inch elastic, and this is wider than 1 inch. So that is not a problem. I'm simply going to take this elastic and trim it down. In this case, I will be cutting off 1/2 inch. It's not going to lie there for me to do it. But you can see that I'm just going to cut off 1/2 inch all the way around, and then I'll have 1 inch elastic. And I'll save that piece that I cut off because, you know, you use 1/2 inch elastic a lot. So if you don't have the exact right width that they call for, you can often fix that by cutting what you do have. So let's go ahead and make that casing. One more thing, when you're folding down your fabric to make the casing, here's your side seam. And you are going to be folding that down like that and then feeding the elastic through. The instructions say that you can permanently either glue, like use steam a seam, or you could use a basting stitch to hold these seam allowances down so that when you're feeding the elastic through, they don't get caught. I am not going to bother with that because ITY fabric is so thin, it's not going to make a tremendous difference if the elastic doesn't want to glide through. And then of course I have finished these seams with serging, so I could anchor them down with some steam a seam, and that is your call. It is a direction in the pattern, and if you would like to do that, be my guest. So what I'm going to do right now is fold over my 1.5 inches all the way around. I'll give it a nice press. I will sew it right along that edge. If you'd like to, you can sew it real close to the top edge too. Leave a little hole of about 2 inches and thread your elastic through. Okay, there's my casing. They want me to stitch about 1/4 inch from the edge. Now, if this were a woven, you would have to finish that raw edge of the casing because it would definitely fray. You could finish it by folding under, or you could finish it by serging. But because this is a knit, it is not going to fray, and your job is easier because you don't have to finish it. You literally fold over and stitch. So go ahead and go all the way around, except leave that little opening so that you have a place to thread your elastic through. Okay, I left a little opening right there in the front. I still see that F that I wrote. Take your elastic. I'm fond of putting a safety pin on the end of it, and begin threading. Put it right in that hole you left and bring her around. Just keep pulling it through letting the safety pin lead the way and sort of keeping track that your elastic is not going to get all turned around in there. Now, one thing I did not do was sew from the tip top there, and I'm going to pull my elastic out and I'm going to do that. I'm going to sew a line of stitching right along the edge of the top. It helps keep your elastic in place. And that can go all the way around. You don't have to leave any opening there. So, pardon me while I quickly put in that line of stitching at the top. I think it just gives the pants a nice finished look. You don't have to do it, but I'm just gonna go around and put that in, and then I'll thread my elastic through. Once you've gotten your elastic fed through your waistband, bring it out, overlap it a little bit, maybe half an inch, quarter inch, and attach it together with a zigzag stitch. Go back and forth a couple times just to make sure it's nice and tight, okay? Once your zigzagging is done, feed that elastic all the way fully into the casing. Pull down the hole where you inserted it and finish the bottom line of stitching to close it up. So I will just put that under my machine. I will go forward. Oops, it's still on zigzag. Why do I do that? Go forward, backwards, and close her up. Close her up. We had a successful operation. Okay, I'm gonna go put on my pants. Now, here's the thing. They don't have a hem yet. And that is always the last step, as you know. Again, being a knit, they do not have to be hemmed. You could serge around the bottom of them. You can turn them up an inch, half inch, whatever you want to do. Put a double needle, double row of stitching, whatever you'd like. My pants, I'm hoping, have kind of a beachy vibe, and I might leave the hems raw. I'll see how long they are. Okay, I'll be back in a flash to show you. Hang on. Okay, here's the reveal. I have to back way up so you can see. These are our wide leg pants for today. These have pockets. They're flared, but they're not crazy flare. They have just enough flare to move and be interesting. We've got a little elasticized waist there, a very nice fit. Once again, the pockets, you know, sometimes pockets are a pain because you have to sew them 4 times, but then you have pockets. So that was new look 6384. Our wide leg pants. Sew yourself a pair, because you know what? They're over $300 on Net-a-Porter. I'll put a link to those pants so you can see them, the ones by Alice and Olivia. Thank you for sewing with me today. I hope that you found this useful, and I just want to encourage you, keep sewing, because all of these techniques, and these might be considered very basic, doesn't matter. Sew them again and again and again, and you're just gonna get great at it. And then you truly can look through the pattern books and choose anything your heart desires. So keep progressing, and I'll talk with you soon. Enjoy your wide leg pants. The wilder, the better. See you next time.